What's going on? This is Theo Greminger, aka the OG Fantasy. I'm giving you 6 Dynasty trades to make right now. I'm talking to you people who think that you're going to win the championship in 2024. You look at your roster, you say, I'm a couple of players away from making a big impact and taking my team over the top. You rebuilding teams, I'll drop some videos for you later in this offseason. But right now, I'm talking to you guys, the people who want to win the cash in 2024. I got 6 players who I want you to target right now. Some of your managers in your leagues are going to be sleeping. Some of them want to hibernate when the season's over. But you're going to find other teams that are actively looking to make changes just like yourself. Some of these teams are looking to rebuild. Some of these teams just want to trade to trade. And we're going to make some trades right now that are going to help you win in 2024. Let's go chase that money. The first player that I want you to target, and yup, I'm giving you a 30-year-old player, a 30-year-old wide receiver. You got some age apex people who don't know how to treat aging wide receivers in Dynasty. As soon as a guy hits a certain age, whether it's 28, whether it's 29, some with 27, they want to move on from wide receivers. And historically, this bet has worked sometimes. But nowadays, you're seeing more and more players have dominant seasons at 29, 28, and yes, 30 years old. And my dynasty target is Mike Evans. This is a player who exploded out the gate in 2023. He had 3 straight games with touchdown catches, and then he finished the season on another tear. He ends up leading the NFL with 13 touchdown catches on the year. And he did this in his first season with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. Evans also, like, his rise led to a really solid season from Baker Mayfield. Mayfield finishes as a QB1. Mayfield ends up having career highs in passing yardage and touchdown passes, and that's with him being continually focused on getting Mike Evans the ball. I think expecting a regression for Mike Evans because of his age is the wrong approach. He has multiple outs to being in a good situation or better in 2024. Evans is an impending free agent. And the most logical landing spot for Evans is Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is probably going to pay Mike Evans the bag and have him end his career as the greatest offensive player uh, in Bucks history. But if the Bucks don't pay him, or if Mike Evans says, I want to chase a Super Bowl with somebody, there's going to be plenty of teams lining up for Mike Evans and a couple of situations where he could land very, very well. Expect for teams like Kansas City, Buffalo, and other high powered offenses to look at Mike Evans as the player that could push them over the top. What if he lands in a team that doesn't have a great situation? There's still a chance that you could see him have 145 plus targets for 2 straight years based on the sort of contract insulation that he's going to have. Dynasty managers continue to need help when valuing these veteran wide receivers. Some of your league mates will do it better than others, but a lot of league mates are going to look at Mike Evans as a cash out guy right now. They're going to try to sell him high, and I think you might get 2 more years of high end fantasy production at a reduced cost simply because he's an older player. Now, pivoting over, I gave you a wide receiver. Now let's talk about the quarterback spot. The quarterback to trade for. And again, I wrote this article before the NFL playoffs, so two of my recommendations, they got more expensive, but it doesn't mean they're not guys you want to kick the tires on. I'm seeing a lot of people saying to sell high on Jordan Love, and I'm actually going to tell you, you can be one of the people to go out there and buy high on Jordan Love, because I think Jordan Love is the real deal. We moved him up at Player Profiler in our dynasty rankings at the quarterback position, and he earned it. He had a top 5 season this year, and this was somewhat out of nowhere. There was a lot of people before the year who were letting him go completely undrafted in redraft. He finished only behind Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and Dak Prescott in the scoring this year. He passed for 30 touchdowns in the regular season, and he had only 11 interceptions. That's pretty solid right there. And then you add in the fact that he had 4 rushing touchdowns, and you're talking about a very efficient player in his first year as a full-time starter. And what's even more impressive with Love is he did this with one of the youngest offenses in NFL history when it gets to the comes down to the receiver positions. He had two rookie tight ends and multiple wide receivers in their first and second seasons in the league. And the wide receiver that drafters were betting on in the preseason, Christian Watson, missed a lot of time with injuries. So you're talking about a guy who was passing the ball to guys like Romeo Dubs, Jaden Reed, aka the War Daddy, Dontavian Wicks. Uh, he was elevating the play of younger players, and those guys really played well at times. But Jordan Love certainly put them in a spot to succeed. Love is only 25 years old. He has considerable upside when you view his near and long term future. Green Bay could also add even more firepower to their receiving core this offseason. This is a team where if you look at them on paper, you say, this will be a spot for a veteran wide receiver to end up in to add even more firepower to their team. And I don't think the market values where Love is. Certainly after the Dallas win, Love has some steam, but I don't think the market views him as a guy that is a real, game changer for your dynasty roster. He's continually ranked as a QB2 level player. Whether you look at Player Profiler, whether you look at other websites for your dynasty rankings, go look and see where Jordan Love is ranked in terms of quarterbacks. A 25-year-old with this sort of production who just won an NFL playoff game, and people are still going to rank him, below wide quarterback 11. So you're going to end up paying high-end QB2 prices for a guy who could have several QB1 seasons down the line. And this is the kind of player that could really push your team over the edge in super flex formats in 2024. And when you look at the steam behind the rookie class with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, I really like all three of those guys. I think those guys could be big time players for fantasy. But if we had to bet on which player scores the most fantasy points in 2024, Jordan Love or that group of three rookies, I'm leaning Jordan Love. And he's going to cost you a lot less than those other three young players. And he still offers you youth at 25 years old. Now we've done a wide receiver, we've done a quarterback. Now we're back to the wide receiver well. And we have a small buying window on Tank Dell of the Houston Texans. That's right. Tank Dell is my number 3 player I want you to trade for right now. Dell was sensational this season in Houston. He had 6 games with 17 PPR points or more in only 11 games as a pro, and he averaged 15 points per game. That's an elite number for a rookie. Nobody dislikes Tank Dell right now. You ask, your league mates in Dynasty what they think of Tank Dell. They say, we like Tank Dell. But I think there's a disconnect between his age, role, and on-field production with the sort of Dynasty value he could bring you. Despite his potential for elite fantasy production in 2024, the vibes are just not there. And I think that trading for Dell this is like the time to do it. It's a small buying window and it's right now. And there's several factors that keep Dell's price semi-affordable. There's some managers who will always have injury apprehension. When a guy gets injured, they're a little more apt to move on, especially regarding younger players like Dell with a smaller sample size. Some managers still don't honestly buy in on Dell as a high-end dynasty value guy. I think everybody buys in on him as a guy who can ball, but not everybody looks at him as a potential game changer for your dynasty roster. It's sort of a perfect storm. They look at it as sort of a perfect storm of production this year, and it cannot maintain. Now you also have the Nico Collins boost. Nico Collins is playing absolutely incredible football. He ends up playing very well in Houston's win over Cleveland, where everybody was watching. There's been more Nico Collins enthusiasm right now, and it's cooled the Tank Dell enthusiasm. A lot of people view Nico Collins and Tank Dell as a 1A, 1B scenario. Some people now view Nico Collins as the 1A with Tank Dell sliding in as a big time wide receiver too. But when they played on the field together, Tank Dell certainly had big time production. You also have the fact that Tank Dell was doing it in his first year in the league versus Nico Collins doing it in his third year in the league. I like Nico Collins, but I would rather have Tank Dell in Dynasty. I think that this window for Tank Dell will close as soon as somebody posts a video of him working out, looking fully healthy in the offseason, and the steam will emerge. Take some shots, try to make a trade for Tank Dell right now. Now, much like Jordan Love, I wrote this article before the Green Bay Dallas game. So the player I recommended at tight end in the article version was Jake Ferguson. And I'm still recommending Jake Ferguson, but the price has now gone up. But I don't think it's quite to where it could end up being in terms of like how much he should cost based on how much he should help your team and his age. When you look at the tight end rankings for Dynasty, you're rarely going to see Jake Ferguson as a top 5 mention. Usually he's going to end up being ranked around now after his big playoff game. Let's call it tight end 10, 11, 12. He doesn't seem to be breaking through into that truly elite tier. You have Sam Laporta, you have Dalton Kincaid, you have Trey McBride, you have all these younger players who are ranked ahead of him. Then you still have the aging market of tight ends where a lot of dynasty managers say, I'm getting this elite production out of guys like Evan Ingram, David Njoku, George Kittle, and these guys are all older players. I don't really need to make a trade. But with Jake Ferguson, this is a player who you could be set at tight end with for the next 5 years. I think this is a player where, despite his big game, again, much like Jordan Love, fantasy managers are looking to cash out. And fantasy football does not have to be a complicated thing. Jake Ferguson is having big time production in the fantasy playoffs, but he's also having big time production with Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott has been a tight end, a tight end whisperer at the quarterback spot. He's now had 4 straight seasons where his tight end is finished as a top 12 option. Dalton Schultz in 2020, Dalton Schultz in 2021, Dalton Schultz again in 2022. Then they lose Dalton Schultz. This looks like a transition year at tight end for the Dallas Cowboys, and Jake Ferguson finishes as tight end 9 in 2023. It didn't matter if it was Ferguson. It didn't matter if it was Schultz. But Ferguson did this in year 2 in his career. He finishes as a tight end 1, and he was one of Prescott's preferred targets all season long. He finished with 65 catches on 96 targets and 5 touchdowns. I mean, those are very, very good numbers. The 96 targets for a tight end is significant. And the 5 touchdowns could have been much more. He led the all tight ends with 24 red zone targets this season. There's no reason that Ferguson cannot put up similar numbers or better in 2024. Despite being a second year player, I don't think, and having a massive playoff win, I don't think the market is as enthusiastic about Ferguson being a long term high end asset at one of fantasy football's trickiest positions. I would be willing to pay more for Ferguson than most people because I think this is a guy that I can plug in for the next few years and not worry about the tight end position. He's also got elite athleticism. And again, he did this in his second year as a pro. Now, I've given you a tight end. I've given you a quarterback. We've given you 2 wide receivers. And the last player we're going to talk about, or actually the first player I'm going to talk about at the running back spot, is Jonathan Taylor. And everybody's going to say, yo, Theo, Jonathan Taylor is ranked pretty high up in Dynasty. And he is. But this is a push the chips in type move for you. Jonathan Taylor is sitting back in the weeds right now with the Dynasty rankings. You're talking about a player who was the RB1 in Dynasty very recently. Things have changed. He's had poor luck with in terms of injuries and situations. And now you have several younger players ahead of Taylor. You also have Christian McCaffrey ahead of Taylor in a lot of Dynasty rankings. This is like a push the chips in type move. Taylor is not going to be cheap. If you want a Dynasty trade video where somebody's telling you to go trade for some backup running back or some wide receiver 3 that you can get for cheap, there's plenty of those out there. But I want to give you a difference maker that I think can help you win money and win titles in 2024, and that's Taylor. This is like a transformative piece for your Dynasty team. It'll cost you something substantial, but he still might be a guy that you can get for 80 cents on the dollar. He's poised for a career renaissance this season in Indianapolis. He finished as the RB1 overall in 2021, but then he fell off considerably in 2022. His points per game dipped from 22 points per game in 2021 all the way down to 13.3. And after being regarded as the RB1 overall, like Taylor now is behind guys like Brees Hall, Bijan, Jameer Gibbs. This year, Taylor missed the start of the season in like an ugly and bizarre contract dispute. The Colts and Taylor eventually come to terms, and the two sides agreed on a massive 3-year deal. Taylor now has the contract insulation and the chance to return to fantasy greatness. After 2 long seasons, I think fantasy managers could be rewarded with the return to like massive scoring. We saw 22 points per game in 2021. That's a hard number for him to reach, but I do think 20 points per game, 19 points per game, this is in the range of outcomes this season. I think that Taylor is going to thrive next to Anthony Richardson. We've have not seen Taylor play next to a mobile rushing quarterback like Anthony Richardson. Taylor has the big playability to rip off huge runs in this offense. There's also now a large sample size of running backs having elite production in this Shane Steichen-led Colts offense. Between Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, these two guys combined for 9 games with 17 or more PPR points scored. In Dynasty and in life, nice things cost a lot. Consider sending an offer for a player like Taylor that could push your Dynasty team to new heights. The other thing is, this rookie running back class is not like the last two. I like a few of these rookie running backs upcoming in 2024, but none of these guys have the potential for what Jonathan Taylor has in 2024. Go and make a trade for a great player that has a lot of gas left in the tank and is in a great situation in 2024 in Taylor. And the final player I want to talk about is another wide receiver, and that's T. Higgins. And much like Mike Evans, T. Higgins has a contract expiring. Unlike Mike Evans, I think that T. Higgins could get franchise tagged this year. Higgins has a great deal of uncertainty about his future. He's also failed to live up to early career expectations. Unlike some of the other guys in this video, this is sort of a buy low. After T. Higgins reached 15.7 points per game in 2021, there's been a steady decline in Higgins' production for the last few seasons. This year, he had a career low of 11.5 points per game. This has created a buying opportunity that could pay large dividends in 2024 and beyond. Age is on Higgins' side. Despite 4 seasons in the league, he's still only 24 years old. Stats-wise, we've seen a great deal from him. He's scored 24 touchdowns as a pro. He's posted 2 seasons with 70-plus receptions, and he's had 2 seasons with 1,100 receiving yards. But it feels like the best season of Higgins' career is coming soon. It doesn't feel like we've seen it. It feels like it's going to happen in the future. Maybe 25, maybe 26, maybe 27. Higgins is going to have that massive season with, an elite, let's call it a top 10 finish. That's in his range of outcomes as a player. He's an impending free agent, and there's 2 scenarios here. Either Higgins is franchise tagged by Cincinnati and he returns and plays alongside Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow is pounding the table for T. Higgins to come back this year. Loves T. Higgins. That's his big play guy, and that's the guy that opens up Jamar Chase for everything. But if he is not a Cincinnati Bengal, then it means some team paid him a massive contract. He would end up being one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL if another team is able to sign him. And if he goes to another team, you could be looking at a massive bump in targets. And the chance of being that team's wide receiver 1 for the first time in his career. So Higgins has 2 scenarios. Goes and plays with a great quarterback with like Joe Burrow, where he'll get advantageous matchups playing alongside Jamar Chase, or he'll go to a team that views him as their wide receiver 1 and he'll see a huge volume boost. Go ahead and make some trades for T. Higgins. Stick with us here at Player Profiler all season long, all off season long. I'm Theo Greminger. Find my written work on playerprofiler.com. You can find my videos right here on Player Profiler YouTube. And you can find all of my podcasts here on Player Profiler YouTube, as well as anywhere you get your podcasts. We got you all off season long. Let's win some titles in 24. Let's make some money. Have a good one.